If you're tuning in live, you're tuning in the official Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day pregame show. We're talking news, trends, what to expect. I want to start talking to people around the event today. People of all ages around America, they're starting to turn positive about Bitcoin. This is a change, right? We saw in the past, there was a lot of negativity, a lot of skepticism, a lot of FUD. Q, let's start with you. Why is the mainstream starting to pay attention to Bitcoin? Why are people thinking positively?
Number go up. It's what you've done for me recently, man. And the number's been going up. It's been steady. Bitcoin has for about a year. We'll talk about it a lot more throughout the course of the next 3 days. But if we're going up and to the right, people are paying attention. If we're going down and to the right, people get angry.
Anthony, let's go to you. Obviously, traveling in different circles than us here at the Humble Bitcoin Magazine.
That is completely true. But I would say one other thing is happening. There's going to be an avalanche of positive political activity for Bitcoin. And I think the market is sensing that. And I think if you look at the rhetoric over the last year, the sea change in rhetoric in terms of politicians in Washington, state and local governments that are waxing more positively about Bitcoin is evident. And so I love that. And I think that's helping the up and to the right movement.
Alex, let's go to you. Everyday Americans, they're a little bit more positive, but they're still skeptical, right? They're not on board. Adoption is not yet mainstream. What's your take on the sentiments right now?
Sentiment has leveled out or waned a little bit in the last few months, I'd say, but we had an excellent run-up, a year of adoption, companies putting Bitcoin on the balance sheets, celebrities. The new trend. It's great.
All right. Well, of course, we're going to be talking about all the panels today, and the upcoming panel, we're going to have mayors talking about Bitcoin. So these are politicians at the state and local level who are making Bitcoin part of their platform. Anthony, you mentioned this, so maybe we'll start with you. You mentioned this wave that we're going to see of politicians embracing Bitcoin. Why is that happening?
So we all know what a decentralized autonomous organization is, a DAO, but I believe that we have a DLO in the United States, which is a decentralized lobbying organization. So you guys tell me the number. I've got it estimated at 73 million people own some piece of a Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency, and they are typically single-issue voters. So what happens is, wait a minute, you're going to put something, legislation that's negative to me, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Washington. And so last summer, pro-Bitcoiners in Washington were trying to put language in the legislation, anti-Bitcoiners, Elizabeth Warren, who I think is very misinformed, trying to put negative information in. And so they didn't do either. Why? They had a waterfall of phone calls coming into Washington telling them to stop. Next piece, because you guys know I got my 11-day PhD in Washington scumbaggery, so I can tell you how these people operate. Follow the money. Okay, you got so much money coming in from lobbyists, trade associations, et cetera. I'll predict right here, 2024, both presidential candidates will be pro-Bitcoiners and pro-blockchain.
But why? Let's just stick with you, Anthony, for a second. Why at the local level, right? So let's say a mayor, right? We're going to hear from 3 mayors in the Miami area. What's the thought process there? Their constituency might have more questions.
First of all, congratulations to you guys at Bitcoin Magazine, and take a look at this area that we're in right now. There'll be 25,000 people here. We have a volcano. I hope it doesn't have a premature eruption while I'm making this thought. But I mean, here we are.
Only scheduled eruptions.
Okay. Only scheduled eruptions. Okay, we're going to talk to your girlfriend about that. But here's what I would say about politicians. They want this. They want 25,000 tourists. They want the tax revenue associated with it. They want the glitz. They want the free media associated with something like this.
Right.
And so I think it's impossible for a local politician not to want to be pro-Bitcoin. Also, look at the demographic. They want younger people in their cities to revitalize their cities. Well, obviously, so all of this is pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin.
When we hear that, some people get skeptical. Q, I know you're no stranger to being skeptical about the political activity.
I mean, I think you said it best where you bring up just the media blitz that comes with being pro-Bitcoin or pro whatever you want to be. And I'm a firm believer that we've watched every politician cling to the latest hot trend to grift for some votes and then not follow through. While some politicians have followed through and there have been some legislative passes, I do think a good majority of these politicians are candidly just grifting for votes. They want votes. They want to stay in power. Yeah. Let's see what they actually do when they're given the opportunity.
I accept that.
Alex, let's go over to you. Let's say you could make up an ideal political candidate. Who would you embrace as a Bitcoin politician? Would you embrace a Bitcoin politician?
I would embrace a Bitcoin politician insofar as their actions back up their affinity to Bitcoin. That is, you see mayors bringing Bitcoin on the balance sheet, actually distributing Bitcoin to city and state level employees. That's the kind of thing I think is positive for Bitcoin. We don't need we need the faces to grow, but they're not fundamentally going to change Bitcoin. So we need some action on the political side.
I'll toss it over to Anthony because I am curious for your thoughts. Obviously, people do have specific demands, right? The Bitcoin voter is beginning to gain an understanding, and legal tender, a big issue, right? This idea that people want to be able to use Bitcoin without the tax burden. Your take?
Yeah, well, I think that's evident. If you poll Bitcoiners, that's the number one issue. I'm comforted by the IRS, believe it or not, because the IRS is treating Bitcoin as intangible property. And, I didn't learn much in law school. I'll just tell you the two things I did learn. Number one, don't be a lawyer. I thought that was the most obvious thing to learn when you go to law school. But then the second thing is about property rights. And one thing about the United States, the property rights here are sacrosanct. They go all the way back to the Magna Carta. So it's a 900 years of legal precedent. I was encouraged when the IRS said Bitcoin is intangible property. That means it's almost impossible to eradicate in a free nation like the United States. So these people are sitting there. Some of them are autocratic in their thinking. They want to control Bitcoin. Bitcoin's something that's not controllable. Everyone on this desk knows that 10% of the global transactions for Bitcoin actually happen in China.
Yeah.
And that's after China has flushed out the miners, repeatedly said you can't have Bitcoin in China. 10% of the transactions are happening. So to me, I think we're going to get what we want with Bitcoin. What would be confusing to me and an open question is what happens to the other coins? Are they going to be treated as tender, cash, commodity, or are they going to be treated as securities? I don't know the answer to that. I think there's a lot of complexity there.
Well, I think we can look internationally, right? So zooming out, we're talking about the mayors here in the U.S. Let's zoom out internationally. Obviously, we're going to have international politicians here today. El Salvador embracing Bitcoin, recognizing Bitcoin as a commodity, introducing it as legal tender. Alex, maybe let's go to you. How do you look at the international picture as compared to the U.S. for Bitcoin?
I think we've got a very privileged background here, especially in the U.S. and these nations. If you look at El Salvador, what Bukele did was a very good thing, a very humanitarian thing. You're banking the bankless. You're providing them with an asset that's immune to government capture.
Some big stats there, right? 60% of people in El Salvador, by some statistics, now with Bitcoin wallets.
Amazing.
Q, your take on the international scene, pulling out again. We talked about the U.S. mayors, thinking about now international, the regulatory environment.
Look, one of my favorite books is The Sovereign Individual, and we are witnessing some of the things discussed in that book come to life before our eyes. You have a country that has now adopted a cryptocurrency to afford the ability to those who hold it to come tax-free, spend it. If you spend enough, you become a citizen of this area, pushing forward more legislation to make it more accessible to as many people as they want. Other countries are going to follow suit. And mark my words, it's going to be the ones that have not benefited from the money printer here in America. The further away you have been from this money printer, the more you have been left out from the benefit of it. And everyone is going to watch and take the lead of El Salvador. Look over the course of the last 18 months, roughly, they are hitting it out of the park compared to every other country in the world as far as tourism.
But we're not seeing that falling. So, Anthony, curious if you could speak to the mentality of U.S. lawmakers and politicians. You mentioned China, the ban, not effective. El Salvador, legal tender, some questions. How do you look at the landscape? What do you think politicians in the U.S. are looking at?
Politicians are by and large institutionalists, and our institutions are basically centralized. Bitcoin represents decentralization, propos to the sovereign individual. So they're cautious. They don't want to be stupid. They don't want to be fired over something. That's like the typical institutional mentality.
You don't want to be the first mover.
They don't want to be the first mover because, God forbid, they embarrass themselves. But I want to jump on something that Q was saying about the sovereign individual. So there was a book, I'm going to really date myself now, okay? When I was a college student, Rees-Mogg and Davison wrote a book prior to the sovereign individual called Blood in the Streets. Not available anymore. But what did Blood in the Streets capture? The essence of central authorities creating boom and bust cycles in a society. And then the sovereign individual kicked in with, well, imagine if you could have a digital currency, a non-governmental currency that was standardized where they couldn't manipulate it. You see what I mean? And that's where we are right now. So the brilliance of where we are at this point in our lives is we've got the technology, we've got the wherewithal to take the drunk driving away from the central bankers, right? I mean, obviously they've blown us up, right?
But do you think we can avoid the temptation here in the U.S. and the Western countries of central bank digital currencies? There's already a lot of positivity in the statements about it.
Avoid them. So I think we're going to avoid it in the United States.
Or do you want to see a central bank?
I don't want to see a central bank digital currency because of the control related to it. If they've got your smart wallet and they're descending, let's say they do a stimulus and they're putting central bank digital currency into your wallet, I don't want them to have that level of social control over the population. Obviously, the Chinese want that. They want you to be. They want to bear witness to you with their AI and their cameras all over the streets. They want to socially score you. And then through their digital currency, they want to either take money away from you or put money in your wallet. And so that is the most pernicious thing I can think about as it relates to individual liberty. So I don't want to see that. I think the stable coins will be the equivalent of that, and they'll be run by more... not governments. Let's call it private enterprise. And remember, the Fed wire came out of Citibank. I just want to remind everybody. So what happened was Citibank figured out a way to start wiring money to people. And then the Fed said, okay, what the hell are you guys doing? And then when they realized what they were doing, they said, okay, we would like to regulate it.
They nationalized that?
Well, they didn't nationalize. It's still done by the private companies, but there's a Fed wire number on it. They regulated it. They just wanted to make sure if I'm sending money to Q, he gets it. I'm not double spending it and all that other stuff. So I think the government can come in and help to regulate stable coins and to make sure that the transactions are happening in an ethical way. But I really don't want them to go into the realm of a U.S. government digital currency.
Talking about stablecoins here on the Marathon News Desk at Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day. Want to stick with concerns. So we just talked about some concerns about central bank digital currencies. Another narrative that's really taking hold, especially here in the U.S., is the climate debate. The ESG narrative that's forming around Bitcoin, that Bitcoin's energy use is bad, negative. Q, your take, how would you rebut that? And your take.
I mean, we don't spend too much time really in this country discussing what it actually takes to maintain the petrodollar system that we have, to maintain the US dollar as the global reserve currency, the amount of energy it takes to maintain our military, the amount of energy it takes to just continuously print money. How much energy does it actually take to maintain every single ATM in this country right now? Pales in comparison to the amount of energy that Bitcoin miners are using on a global scale. Bitcoin miners, in addition, are incentivized to find the cheapest form of energy. Look at what came out of companies like Upstream Data.
Of course, you have Exxon now.
Exxon as well, using that same technology of taking the excess energy used during the natural gas mining process that was just wasted for years. It was never being capitalized or used. And here we are now using that energy and putting it towards mining Bitcoin at a net positive for the environment. We're now burning less methane. We're putting less CO2 into the air because all of that is being used in powering these mining rigs.
Alex, your take. So it sounds like Q's saying, actually, the narrative is quite positive around Bitcoin and energy use. Your take.
I think it's been a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I think mainstream media wants to correlate energy usage overall as a negative for society. But when you look throughout history, it's obvious that it's good. It's good for us. The more power we have at our disposal,
look at the lights.
Look at the volcano.
Careful with that volcano.
Hey,
I'm not dressed right for that volcano.
Yeah. We don't want to talk about how much energy the volcano takes.
Let's go over the stats. I think it's important. 0.13% of global carbon emissions goes to Bitcoin mining. So let's just reverse out. Let's look at the entire landscape. 0.13%. Okay, your Christmas lights in North America generate more electrical output than all of the Bitcoin mining network in a year. So what are they doing? They don't like Bitcoin, so they want to hit it with something that they think is a virtue signal. And so they say, oh, it's creating a lot of carbon emission and a lot of energy, right? That's the whole Elizabeth Warren uninformed narrative. But step back and think about what Q's saying, okay? If I'm driving to my bank to visit my teller and the bank has to be heated in the winter and cooled off in the summer. And the teller, he or she, is driving their car to the bank, and we're all admitting all of this carbon so that I can make a check deposit or get cash out of the bank. Everybody cool out a second. Think about the amazing technology that we have, and think about the future where if we're eliminating all of that transactional activity, the reduction in carbon. And so we have to step through that one issue that anti-Bitcoiners or anti-crypto people are preying on because they know it's a good virtue signal for them.
I'll do a small plug for my latest piece out in Forbes, Why Bitcoin Uses Energy, unpacks this a little bit more. But, of course, tight time, Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day, just starting. I want to talk about the conference. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers. We've got Peter Thiel. We've got Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Peterson, Cynthia Lummis, Michael Saylor. The list goes on. Curious, you guys on the stage, who are you most excited about and why? Q?
Maybe it's cheating a little bit, but Jack Mallers. I mean, I will never forget being
CEO of Strike.
CEO of Strike, who last year at Bitcoin 21 helped announce that El Salvador was pushing forward legislation to make Bitcoin legal tender. He is following that up this year with another surprise special announcement. Remains to be seen. He has teased some things on Twitter. My money is still betting on some sort of an Apple tie-in, but we will see.
Tough act to follow, though. Last year's speech, very emotional, very personal. You think he can really pull off another announcement that's that large?
I don't doubt Jack. And Jack we trust, man.
Alex, I'm going to toss it over to you. Bitcoin 2022, the conference starting tomorrow. What are you looking forward to and why?
I would say Bukele. President Bukele. I think it's going to be hard
of El Salvador.
President of El Salvador. I would say it's going to be hard to top a nation-state adoption announcement. However, I think in terms of disrupting U.S. dollar hegemony, ELS beginning to trade in Bitcoin would be very beneficial first step for everyone.
Let's just say this conference, it ends. There's no announcement of a new nation-state adopting Bitcoin. Bearish or bullish?
I would say I'd be disappointed. That'd be a bit bearish. I'm looking at Honduras.
So you want to see that shoe drop at this conference?
Looking at you, Honduras.
And we'll see. Anthony, curious. Obviously, love to hear your take on this. Who are you looking forward to, and why?
Well, I mean, all of those are great speakers. Of course, you have an unbelievable lineup here. I'm going to say something boring. Actually, I want to hear from Senator Loomis. Because I do think that's where the bottleneck is in the United States. We've got to get the Congress, that's the House and the Senate, to release the dogs, if you will, into the woods as it relates to Bitcoin. Just to key off of something that Alex said just quickly, imagine the marketing. Let's say I'm the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, pick a Sovereign Wealth Fund. I make an announcement that I put $100 million of Bitcoin on my balance sheet.
You're teasing us here. You're
just
the volcano. The volcano might be erupting.
Just think about that for a second from a marketing perspective, okay? Think about, these guys are running advertisements on CNN, come visit my country. Think of just putting $100 million of Bitcoin on your balance sheet, what that would do for your country in terms of the free media, the attraction of young people to find out what's actually happening in that country. So I'm want to be a bit provocative here. I'm hoping, perhaps not at this conference, but in the next 3 to 6 months, you'll hear an announcement like that.
Very interesting. Of course, want to talk about the market. We're winding down on time here before we're going to cut you to the main stage. Over to the mayors talking. Great discussion we're going to have there. Bitcoin price. We ended Q1 flat. We entered Q4 of last year with tremendous expectations. Some would say they weren't met. Curious, you guys, taking the last 6 months of Bitcoin price action, what's your outlook ahead? And can this conference, boost the market, stimulate it, get us back to feeling bullish? Q.
I mean, look, I believe the last I saw before we jumped on here was just under 45,000. Pete, feel free to correct me on that.
We are sitting at 44.
44,000. When we hit 44,000 in 2021, we celebrated, we cheered. Pompliano was posting, trolling Peter Schiff every 1,000 we went up. Right now, we are crying, we are screaming, we are freaking out. And my only question to that is why? Zoom out. We are going to be just fine.
Zoom out. What have you done for me lately? Alex, what's your take on the current market? Last 6 months, and can we see some catalyst at the conference?
Like I said, I think some of that bullishness overall might have worn down, which is exciting. As a Bitcoin holder, you worry that the price will get away from you. This is a scarce asset. You got to think about it a bit differently. I would say that here at the Bitcoin 2022 conference, sentiment morale is going to be at an all-time high, regardless of price. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin.
I mean, I'll just jump in there and say, look, a boring 44,000. I started covering Bitcoin as a journalist when it was $50. To see it at 44,000, to see people bored, quite tremendous. Anthony, still want to hear your take. 6 months.
So I've got it in assets and liabilities, and so what was the headwind? Regulation. I would have thought by now we would have had a cash Bitcoin in the ETF in the United States. Number two, the pandemic. I would have thought we would have been completely out of the pandemic right now. We're still seeing, unfortunately, the last vestiges of the pandemic and the disruption in the supply chain. And then lastly, the war. Don't underestimate what the war did to everybody in terms of the shock value and the conservation of capital and so forth. But up against those three things is adoption. So I'm late to the party, guys, although we all know on this panel it's very, very early. I bought my first Bitcoin in October of 2020. I think I paid $12,000 for my first Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor was pushing me in August. I wish I'd listened to him in August, okay? but here's the point that I'm making. When I bought that Bitcoin, Glassnode said there was approximately 80 million wallets. When I looked on Glassnodes this morning, it's approximately 247 million wallets. So take a step back, like Q says, look at it. We're going from 80 million wallets to 240. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached escape velocity. We're going to head to 1 billion wallets. You only have 21 million coins. A couple million coins likely were lost in the inception. They're sitting on laptops in people's landfills. They're sitting on old BlackBerries. Maybe there's only 18 to 19 million coins, but there's going to be 1 billion wallets. So buy your Bitcoin now, okay, or you're going to be sorry.
But what are the institutions who are looking at the market watching, right? Are they watching nation-state adoption? Are they watching Bitcoin on the balance sheet?
Remember, if I got $25 billion in TARP money in 2008 to save my centralized bank from the central bank of the United States, I am going into full ass-kissing mode at the Senate hearings, okay, and the congressional hearings. That's what I'm going to do. And if they signal to me that it's okay, then I'm going to open up the floodgate. Let me say this to you, because I'm a trade fi guy, right? Okay, that's how I started my career, 33 years in the business. You get a cash ETF in the United States, every financial services company that has high net worth individuals or retail investors has to offer that cash ETF. If Q's coming to me and I'm at, let's say, Morgan Stanley, and he just sold his company for $100 million, and he says, well, what's your Bitcoin your weapon, what's in your arsenal? Oh, I don't know. We hate Bitcoin. Okay. He's going to Wells Fargo. So everybody is going to be forced into the marketplace once the regulation clears up.
Well, I think you're talking about institutional adoption. I think, backing out, we did see a lot of, a lot of support around retail adoption last year. I guess, throwing it back to Alex, what's going to get retail excited again?
I think it's the names and faces that really bring retail in, the familiar, everybody's wondering when Apple is going to jump into the Bitcoin space. I think it calms people down to see the people they look up to, the people they see all over the internet adopting Bitcoin. I mean, Jordan Peterson, we've got him coming out. I'm very interested to hear what he's learned in his short time in the Bitcoin market, and I'm interested to see whether these faces and stars stay through a potential bear market through the end of the year.
Well, sticking with Anthony's point, do want to talk about regulation. We're going to have politicians on the stage. They're coming right up. The mayors. Regulation, what would be a bullish regulation for you, Anthony? And I'm curious to other people on the panel, is there bearish regulation? Could there be regulation that, the market does not respond well to? Your take.
So I think we've got the bearish regulation right now. We've got all this uncertainty. You've got a lot of politicians like Elizabeth Warren railing on the industry and cryptocurrency, just showing a full lack of understanding. And so I think we're sort of in that bearish regulatory mode right now. That's just my opinion. But what would it be? Again, it goes back to property and an administrative law judge that is a nonpartisan judge that just wants to follow the law. You now have a potential arbitrary and capricious case against the regulators. Let me just explain that quickly. The CFTC approving the Bitcoin futures, there's a lawsuit right now. Davis Polk and Warble filed it on behalf of some of their clients saying, wait a minute, that's arbitrary and capricious. It's no real difference between the futures and the cash ETF. You're making an unnecessary distinction about spot trading versus futures trading. And I think it's going to put an enormous amount of pressure on the regulators. And I think you're going to get a cash ETF done sometime this year. And that will open the floodgate. And Q's going to be calling me, popping champagne somewhere in L.A., and I'm going to tell him, yeah, see, that's going to happen.
So your take is no regulation, the current environment's not sustainable and negative. Alex, your take, can there be conditions under which this regulation is not a positive for the market?
Well, I think when you look at something like the European Union looking to ban unhosted wallets, you'll see kind of a momentary probably dip. But ultimately, if you put any time into understanding Bitcoin, this asset is immune to government capture. I mean, people should know that that doesn't affect their ability to transact peer-to-peer and participate in the network. Anyone with an internet connection can use Bitcoin.
Q?
Taxes. If we have to pay taxes to transact and use our Bitcoin on too often of a basis, no one will be transacting. At a certain point, the transaction volume of Bitcoin is going to have to play a big effect into what the price is and how it's being used on a day-to-day basis. As Anthony said, we are about 2 million Bitcoin away from being completely done. 2140 is the year that we've all circled in Bitcoin. We have a ways to go until then.
I want to ask you a question. So,
Please.
In my fiat currency known as the U.S. dollar, if I'm transacting in it, do I pay taxes? No, right? So if Bitcoin is a commodity and a tender, if you will,
Right.
Boy, that's going to be really tough to enforce that. I mean, I know people like Elizabeth Warren would be dying to do that, but then in other words, you got to remember one great thing about the United States is that this is actually a wonderfully decentralized government. And so there's all types of checks and balances to prevent cuckoo birds like Elizabeth Warren ruling the roost.
Well, we're going to see Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen made a surprise announcement yesterday that she's going to speak on Thursday, coinciding with the Bitcoin 2022 conference. Coincidental timing there. I would love to hear your take, Anthony, while we have some time before the main stage heats up.
Well,
what are you thinking about what's going on?
I try to, fortunate enough to do Squawk Box in the morning a couple times a month. Andrew Sorkin interviewed her about 10 days ago. The first phone call I got was from Michael Saylor. I don't know if you saw the interview, but it was a seminal 90 seconds where she basically looked at Andrew Sorkin. This is after the president's executive order related to cryptocurrency. She says, okay, look, it's here to stay. We just have to figure out a way to fairly and propitiously regulate it. And I think that 90-second interview was eye-opening about where the direction is going. And again, if they go in a, let's say I'm totally wrong,
Spitball.
and they go into a nefarious direction, you have 73 million people. I don't know, what's the Coinbase accounts now?
Yeah.
80,
It's
90
a lot.
million?
And I think it's
But there's-
64% of Americans own Bitcoin.
Okay, so just imagine what's going to happen to these people. 64% of the Americans own it. And by the way, they're one-issue voters
You guys are
related
looking
to this.
skeptical, so I don't know.
It's high.
You need to look that up.
It's great.
We're going to look that up and confirm.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
but
going to
I don't know what
fact
the
check
number
ourselves.
is, but all I know is you got 73 million accounts open at Coinbase. I think that's the number. So just imagine all those phone calls going into Washington. Do you think elected officials want to get knocked out of their seats because they don't understand Bitcoin and they're railing negatively on Bitcoin?
If they're
But do
getting
you
enough
think-
money
do you-
from the banks, maybe.
Do you think she's going to
Maybe,
say
but
something?
I even that because because what you learn about look at what happened with Trump. Okay, Trump had less money than Hillary Clinton, but the ideas do matter as well, right? I think Trump's an asshole. But I'm just saying that you just got to understand it's not just about money. It's ideas and it's about sentiment.
Well, we saw the UK come out and
You allowed to curse on this, by the way? Probably not, right?
100%.
Yeah, I'm just
You're right.
I'm known for
Curse
cursing, so
away.
I'm known for cursing. I just want to make sure I'm consistent with my brand.
I think if we have a volcano, you can curse, right?
All right,
That's
all right,
the
thank you.
setting. It might light up
All
every
right.
time you do. But I want to draw it back a little bit. We're talking about Janet Yellen, talking about regulation in the United States, talking about what she might say or not say. We saw the UK a few days ago talk about crypto regulation, but it was mostly about stablecoins. Do we think that there might be something where she might not say anything about Bitcoin? Alex, your take.
I think it's very interesting that the Treasury Secretary is going to address crypto suddenly on the very,
Just
3-4
happens,
days.
yeah.
Just happens to
Happens
be
to be.
the biggest Bitcoin conference.
Are you
the
gonna
biggest,
invite her
Probably
here?
nothing, right?
Probably nothing.
Right.
Biggest
I love-
financial
I love
conference
that
in the
meme.
world.
Probably nothing.
Would you invite? Would you want to invite Janet Yellen on this program to attend here and deliver her speech here? Can we do
Yeah,
that?
let her on. We'll boo her off the stage. It'll be great.
Oh no, don't boo her.
Yeah.
We need her.
No, but full
Gotta bring her
transparency,
in. Gotta bring her to
Janet,
the
if you would
fold.
like, you are welcome to come join us down in Miami. We have a ticket with your name on it. You can join us right here.
We'll get you a whale pass.
And
So-
we're not booing you. We're bringing you in.
Okay.
We're bringing
we will
you
hear
in.
you out.
We want you inside the tent.
But Anthony is my reference. I will
Remember,
go, I will play
you want
nice.
to pee. You don't want to pee into the tent. You want to always pee outside of the tent. You wanna come
Helpful
into the
advice.
tent.
Helpful advice. What we're not hearing, I think, is again. I think you guys are talking a little bit. We're not hearing explicitly what do you think she's going to address or not address. I mentioned the stable coins versus Bitcoin. What if she comes out and doesn't say anything about Bitcoin? Is that something
There's
that
no
you
way.
expect? Q?
There's absolutely no way she is going to make a statement about digital assets without mentioning the largest digital asset in the industry. Whether her entire speech will be around it remains to be seen. I absolutely expect some sort of a conversation around what the Fed is planning with their CBDC. I expect some sort of a conversation, maybe just a statement or a brief moment where it discusses the conversations going on around separating certain things as securities versus other things as commodities. But that is very low on my list of what I'm expecting. I think it's a huge miss on her and her team's part if they don't like Bitcoin's going to be brought up. Ethereum will be brought up whether or not we like it, and their CBDC absolutely.
Well,
Beyond that,
Congress.
remains to be seen.
Anthony.
I just want to say that, and I agree with Q, but super smart regulators that do the homework on Bitcoin like Bitcoin. Let me explain to you why. Bitcoin is a guardrail for the society. If Bitcoin starts to get adopted, and you've caught Jerome Powell's testimony where he said he's comfortable with digital assets and he's comfortable that there could be more than one reserve currency. He said that in public
In the
testimony.
same context.
Yes, and I just
Really
want to think of
interesting.
super smart regulators are like, we're out of control. We're printing trillions of dollars. We just inducted 42% more fiat currency dollars into the system over the last 2 years. We're out of control. Bitcoin is almost like a guardrail to stop that out of controlness
So
that's
you think
going
U.S.
on.
regulators today understand?
The super
and
smart ones
They
do.
see a
Yes.
world where Bitcoin is a reserve asset,
And they see
globally.
it as a discipline where, yeah, I know, Mr. Politician or Mrs. Politician, you want to print
Well,
money.
then why be
We
hard?
can't do that because Bitcoin is slowly becoming a reserve status in the world, and we're going to always be measured against Bitcoin. So we have to tighten up our monetary policies.
Why be hard on El Salvador then? We've seen the U.S. Congress introduce legislation trying to, make sure that El Salvador has Bitcoin under control. We've seen a lot of that language.
Because El Salvador, this is a new frontier, and every time a new frontier is taking place, you're getting shot at by the old frontier. And that's just the way it works. There's a very famous Harvard Business School case where Jerry Yang shows up with this clunky laptop, and he's meeting with two Pacific Bell executives. He says, hey, let me just show you this thing. What's your favorite pizzeria? And he types it in, and the name and the address pops up, and he looks at the Bell guy. He says, so, you don't need the yellow pages anymore. And the Bell executive says, get the hell out of my office, because here's what we do. We chop down 4 million trees.
Right.
We make paper pulp. We dye it yellow, and we ship a 4-pound book to our clients. We've been doing it for 100 years.
Right.
We do not need this stupid thing that you're calling Yahoo, which is an idiotic name. Get the hell out of my office. And look what happened. And so the president of El Salvador, in 15 years, people are going to look back and say, wow, he saw something that other people needed to embrace, but they weren't brave enough at that moment to embrace it.
El Salvador under pressure. Of course, President Nayib Bukele going to be speaking here. Already, El Salvador delegation is here. Alex, your take on that situation as it's unfolding?
Excited to watch. I mean, one of the things I like about Bukele is not only is it pure signal in terms of Bitcoin, but I agree with Anthony. A lot of the regulators understand Bitcoin, but Bukele is choosing to differentiate Bitcoin from the other crypto, securities, whereas these other politicians, I think, conflate the two as an attack and to undermine it. They lump it in with everything else.
Well said.
Q, your take on Nayib Bukele. Is he savvy with his policy, and what can we learn from it?
I absolutely do. You are seeing an introduction of a new form of energy capture through their volcano-powered mining rigs. You see a new
Volcano right there.
You see a new approach to them introducing volcano bonds.
Every time I get a chance, I'm just going to keep plugging that volcano. Sorry.
You see the volcano bonds being introduced.
It's
as well.
making you horny, right? You can be horny, 'cause I
I can't confirm or
tell.
deny.
You know, I can
Too
tell.
early in the morning for that.
Can you tell?
We're
we-
keeping her.
I'm moving a little closer
This is
to
why
Alex
I'm
on the
under
next
desk.
segment.
Okay, well,
I will say
Yep.
really quickly, if you are watching and enjoying this, smash the subscribe button down below.
that's a YouTube host right there.
That is the YouTube host asking you to subscribe so you can catch all of Bitcoin Magazine live while we break down post-conference stuff as well. But to answer your question about Bukele, one of the big things I'm really looking forward to and just understanding a little bit more is what does the difference between the Bitcoin savvy parts of El Salvador look like, and what are the parts that have not yet embraced it? Because not everyone, it's not 100% in El Salvador yet. We see a lot of FUD around maybe what some of the protests look like. We've heard Samson Mao come on Bitcoin Magazine Live and talk about, if you actually zoom out of these pictures, no different than your former boss saying, look, it was the biggest crowd of people ever to attend, and really it's just
You got
five
to do a
people.
little bit of this, though. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Do I get the form
I
right?
don't know.
I want to
If
stick.
we-
I want
if
to stick
we-
with a point
This
that
is
Anthony
the
made.
worst thing about Bitcoin is it's orange. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the only thing I can say bad about Bitcoin. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's high praise right there. Want to stick with something Anthony said that we really haven't touched on, but we talked about the negative environment for the U.S. economy and how that contrasts with Bitcoin. Obviously, inflation now 40-year highs. We've got the U.S. economy facing a recession. Consumer sentiment, by all indications, is down. People are feeling inflation will be an election issue. How does Bitcoin play into that? Would love your take, Alex, Q, Anthony.
I think people are going to make a flee to Bitcoin as a safe haven. I think you're seeing unprecedented levels of people understanding that the numbers, the CPI, it's all BS. These numbers that are being issued, and the U.S. has no accountability for the amount of dollars that are out there, and it only benefits them to keep kicking the can down the road for as long as
Can
possible.
you drill in for the viewers? How is it that Bitcoin is an inflation hedge, in your opinion?
Bitcoin is the only terminally scarce asset, digital or otherwise, guys. We don't know how much gold there is. We've mined such a small fraction of it. Bitcoin is better than gold in every conceivable way, and I think you're going to see gold bugs start to understand that, and that small Bitcoin portfolio allocation is only going to grow on a longer and longer time scale, at least
Except
historically.
Peter Schiff will never stop.
Q, your take. Consumers obviously feeling a pinch, obviously concerned about inflation. Are they connecting the dots to Bitcoin? Will they connect the dots to Bitcoin?
Short answer, no. I will say in this country, we are told that our current inflation rate is at 7.9%. It remains to be seen what that actually is. You know, they're not actually accounting for gas. At the same time, that's just in this country. Look at my homeland of Iran. They had 92% inflation in 2 years. Look at Turkey. They have 52% inflation in just 1 year. Turkey is on my short list of a potential country to adopt Bitcoin. Iran has already adopted Bitcoin in some capacity. It is slowly happening to these countries that have felt inflation in ways that we can't even imagine in this country. And just wait until gas hits $10 a gallon. Just wait until a steak costs you $35 at the grocery store.
And we're out of time for this pregame, but appreciate you all tuning in. YouTube.com/Bitcoin Magazine. Of course, head over to the Bitcoin Magazine store, pick up a fresh Bitcoin Magazine, subscribe. We're going to head over to the main stage right now where we've got a welcome keynote. Bitcoin Magazine co-founder Tyler Evans will be talking with Mayor Francis Suarez of Miami, Mayor Levine Cara of Miami-Dade, and Mayor Gelber of Miami Beach. Miami mayors coming up soon. We'll be joining you after the break, staying with Anthony, and offering news and commentary on everything going on here at Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day.